Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the That Was Stupid podcast. I am your host, John Seidel, and today we have a treat for you. We have a Food Network star on the podcast. You've seen her on Barbecue Brawl with Bobby Flay and Michael Simon, and we're going to talk about her decision to start her own food blog and how that led to being on Food Network and what it's all led to now. But it required a leap of faith, and even to the point of like her husband quit his job and went all in on it. And so we're going to talk about that decision and some of those micro that was stupid moments decisions, what it's like being a woman in a male dominated field of barbecue. And so I'm excited to talk with her. Her name is Susie Bulloch. And I got to know her because we worked together on a project. I reached out to her. I was a fan of her food blog and saw that they needed help in an area. And I said, hey, this is kind of what I do. Do you need help? And they said yes. And so we worked on a project together and have just stayed in touch ever since then. But before we get to talking with Susie, just a reminder that this episode is brought to you by the Veritas Creative. The Veritas Creative is the company that I started that actually helped Susie on her course endeavor called the Grill Squad. And so if you have a course maybe that you want to launch, if you have a book, if you have writing help, if you need digital media consulting, if you're a nonprofit even that wants to get their message out, go to theveritascreative.com, fill out the form, and let's chat. Let's see how we can help you just like we helped Susie. So once again, we're going to talk with Susie Bulloch. She's out in Utah, which again is kind of an interesting thing. Like you talk about That Was Stupid. Like you're going to launch a barbecue empire in a state that's not, Kansas City or Tennessee, Memphis and she did it. And it has been an incredible ride. And I think you're going to love her as much as I do. She is absolutely great. So without further ado, let's talk to Susie Bulloch on the That Was Stupid podcast. Susie, thank you so much for joining the That Was Stupid podcast. I'm really excited about this one. You were one of my earliest clients when I started my own business, and we've just kind of kept in touch, and I've just loved seeing you and Hey Grill Hey grow, and I'm excited to talk about that today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is super fun. I always love kind of these stories about the beginnings and the process and the journey. So it's always a fun one to tell.
Well, so let's kind of like start just right into it. So give a little bit of background on you. I mean, we know you have Hey Grill Hey, but like what were you doing before Hey Grill Hey? Like what was kind of your thing?
We got to go way back in the way backs.
Let's do it.
So I grew up in a restaurant family. Youngest of 6 kids. Sunday dinners were always the biggest deal. So food has always been a super impactful part of my life. And even when my husband and I were dating, that was one of our favorite date nights, was getting together, cooking, trying a new recipe. We would even watch the Food Network on Sunday nights. That was like our Sunday night date night, was hanging out and watching Iron Chef. So food has always been a thing, but food as a business was never part of my mindset, because growing up in a restaurant family, I was not interested in having a restaurant. And I mean, 20 years ago, that was kind of the only way to have a business in food was, to be on the Food Network or to have a restaurant. And neither of those seemed like a possibility. So I got my psychology degree and Todd got his accounting degree, and we settled down and bought a house and had a baby and did all of those kind of, young adult things. And throughout this whole time, we were still cooking and still talking about food. And that was, going out to eat and finding new places to eat was our favorite thing. So we were like self-identified foodies from the gate. But I found myself with a new baby and a husband that was gone all the time because he was a new auditor in the CPA world. So he was studying for the CPA exams, and it was, busy season doing audits. And we would see him on like Saturday for a little bit and Sunday for a little bit. And that was kind of all the time that we got together. And it wasn't awesome. And I was alone a lot. and I wasn't working at the time, and I wanted to find something that I could do to contribute to our family finances and also something for me to just work on. And during this time, this was the time, early times of blogging.
Yeah.
Blogging. Remember the blogs?
Yes. Blogger.
Yeah, Blogspot. I had a family blog. Yes. Pre-Facebook. And then Facebook was a thing, and I had a friend that I had grown up with, and her older sister started a coupon blog teaching people how to save money using coupons at the grocery store. And I was broke and hungry. And this was a perfect scenario for me because I could follow this coupon blog and get really good deals on groceries. And then I could try out all the recipes that I was reading on the food blogs.
Yeah.
So I became an avid blog reader, big blog fan. Ended up getting a job with the coupon blogger and helping her write her weekly grocery store coupon matchups. And that's how I found my way into the world of digital media and, you know, essentially writing copy for a WordPress blog 16 years ago. So that's what I did while we were having little babies and super tiny kids. That was kind of my thing. Was I worked for her. I got a job working for a couple like little offshoots, just these little side hustles that I could do from home. I could do it on my time. I could do it while the kids were napping, and I could still be a very present full-time parent and not have to go into an office or work at a, you know, traditional job. So it was a perfect fit for me when we were having tiny kids. And one of those jobs that I got was for a company that manufactured grills and smokers. And they wanted to digitize their recipe library. They wanted a food blog that went along with their, you know, physical product. And I was so excited to be given the opportunity. They dropped off a smoker on my porch and said, you know, we just want you to do like 5 recipes a week starting Monday. Me, who our grill at the time was, like a free grill that we got off of Craigslist. It was covered in spider webs. We'd cooked on it a bunch. We loved grilling, but it was certainly not like a top of the line backyard barbecue. You know, we had it, and it was what it was. But getting this type of a grill was so exciting to us. So I started cooking on this all of the time, and I loved this little side hustle. It was one of my favorite things because I'm cooking barbecue. I'm cooking everything outside. Family starts showing up around dinner time. It was like I was getting to live out my own little food blog dreams and be this, you know, foodie creative person. And I didn't have the stress of being like a business owner.
Yeah.
I could just do it on the side. You know, I had a baby during this time period, and it really was this kind of perfect job. And I did that for a couple of years. I wrote a couple hundred recipes for this company.
And are you just like, were you just like coming up with the recipes? You're like, you know, so you grew up in the food business, right? But like, you're not quote unquote professionally trained, but is it because you spent time in the kitchen? Like where was some of this inspiration coming from?
I had a decent amount of cooking chops because that was my hobby. Cooking was my hobby. Work was kind of work, hobby, but like cooking was the thing that I loved. So I had a lot of experience reading recipes and cooking in the kitchen, and that wasn't foreign to me. So it was kind of this magical mashup of here's a new tool to use. And they wanted to digitize their existing recipe library. So they handed me a copy of their physical cookbook and said, let's start with these. So I cut my teeth on existing recipes. I really learned how to use the smoker that I was given. I learned about temperature control and seasoning and all of these different kind of technical things that went with barbecue. And the rest of it was just trial and error. It was really an opportunity for me to try new things and be creative. And not all the recipes that I cooked were ever actually written down. Some of them turned out not great. But it was that kind of learning process and the cooking process and that experimental that I really, really enjoyed. And after, like, you know, you spend so much time doing something, you kind of start to build knowledge. And that was really the case with barbecue for me. It's one of those things that I think you learn by doing.
Yeah.
And it's a very hands-on thing to do. And you can read all you want. You can watch as many YouTube videos as you want. But when it comes down to it, if you've never trimmed a brisket and you're doing it for your first time, you're going to just have to do it.
Yep.
Like, you just have to do it yourself to kind of really understand the process. And that was the case for me. It was a lot of doing, a lot of practicing, a lot of trying and figuring it out. And our first briskets turned out, I still joke, I need to see if I can find the picture of it, but I have a piece of this black hunk. It looked like a meteorite wrapped in tinfoil. It was not cute. It was not delicious. It was terrible. But there was a lot of trial and error, and a lot of time went into figuring out how to do this the right way and learning how the audience responded to the recipes that I wrote on social media and the kind of traffic they were getting to the website. So I was really, really fortunate to have that opportunity to kind of cut my teeth while working for a company that was carrying the brand, if that makes sense. So I really cut my recipe development chops in a safe environment while I was figuring it all out for a couple of years. And eventually I found myself without any of these little side hustles, these side jobs. Companies had brought stuff in-house by that point, which I think, you see a lot of startups. It's great to use contractors and it's great to use remote work. And then eventually you grow to the point where you're like, oh, we need somebody doing this full time. Yep. I was not in a position to take on a full-time job. I still wanted the flexibility of being home with my kids. My youngest was 1. So I was still kind of in that baby toddler phase, and I wasn't looking to, outsource childcare and go into an office. So I found myself without any side hustles, and my husband said, okay, well, what do you want to do at this point? Like, you have an opportunity to choose. And his income had kind of stabilized. He had transitioned jobs, so he wasn't working quite as much. And he's like, you've been working for other people at this point for like 6 or 7 years. What do you want to do? And he's like, if it's nothing, that's okay too. Like, if you just want to focus on being full-time, stay at home. But I'd really grown to love having my own thing and my own work and my own place to put my mental energy. And I think it made me a better mom to have this kind of dichotomy in my life where I could put on my mom hat here and my work hat here. And there was some crossover, but at the end of the day, I liked having a little bit of both. So that's when I kind of decided maybe it's time for me to actually start my own thing. I've been working for other people for so many years, and I felt that little bit of that entrepreneurial buzz.
Yeah.
That maybe I could do my own thing after all this time. Maybe I am capable. And that was kind of the beginning of Hey Grill Hey, because I didn't want to leave barbecue. That's what I didn't want to leave food, but barbecue specifically. I knew there was an opportunity. I knew there were not a lot of women in barbecue, and I knew there was not a lot of resources online at the time about barbecue. Everything that everybody knew about barbecue, you either had to go join a forum and risk getting yelled at by people who knew more than you, or know somebody who knew somebody. But I didn't grow up in that old school, low and slow barbecue type of household or, community or area. Like, out in Utah, we don't have a long history of fired barbecue. So I had to figure it out on my own, and I had to make all the mistakes and do the brisket that turned out like an asteroid and all the things to figure it out on my own. And so I knew there was an opportunity for there to be a resource online that was accessible to beginners and that didn't gatekeep, didn't yell at you, didn't tell you were dumb if you didn't know how to cook it, and really could explain things well so that your recipes would turn out okay the first time, even if you've never done it before. And I saw the opportunity. I really loved barbecue. And like I said, that little entrepreneurial spark that was like, maybe it's time. And so I bought the domain, and that was almost 10 years ago. And I still can't believe that this is what I could do for a living.
All right. So
it's a really long story.
No, this is great.
I told you we were going way back.
It's a good launching off point. And I would say too, just as people make the joke like, I was a client of theirs before they were a client of mine. Is like I found you because I was starting to get into barbecue, and you're exactly right. Like, I found that your site was the most accessible, right? And it was great, and you were a great teacher, and then you had these courses, and it was just awesome, right? And so I think you've definitely nailed that part of your brand promise for sure. When you decided to start Hey Grill, like what were some of the fears that you had? Was it, you definitely saw an opportunity, but there had to have been some fears there.
Oh my gosh, I could write a novel about all the things that I was scared of when it came to starting my own thing. After working for other people for so long and seeing how much effort it was to run the thing, I had always told myself I could never start my own thing. It's too much work. It's too much responsibility. I just want to show up, punch the card, and then go home at the end of the day and not have to carry the weight of all of the decision making and all of the responsibility. So knowing what I was getting into and how difficult it would be, because I had worked directly with people who had started their own things, taking on that weight and that responsibility, I did not know if I was qualified or capable or ready. I didn't know if I had the capacity or the time or the emotional resilience to be the person and the name and the face and the brand and that last line of defense if things ever went wrong. So I really had to face that down and figure out like, okay, well, they did it. Maybe I can do it too.
Yeah.
There was also the fear of being a female entering a really male-dominated space, especially in a very public way, because at the time, social media was kind of the way that you got your name out about your website and about your brand. It still is. But knowing that I was going to be putting my face online, I'd written everything at that point kind of as a ghostwriter, essentially. Or people didn't really know who I was. The recipes that I developed for the company before that, they didn't even put my first name on there. It was just S. Bulloch. So nobody knew I was a female. Nobody knew who I was. It wasn't, there really wasn't a personality or a persona or me behind what was being put online. So letting myself step into that spotlight and knowing that there would be criticism and deciding I would face that also was very scary. One thing that really helped me in that regard was having a daughter. We want our girls to believe that they can be whoever and whatever they want to be in whatever capacity they choose to be. And if I wanted that to be true for her, I kind of had to believe that it was true for me.
Yeah.
So if this was a space that I really felt passionate and excited about, then I had to believe that I was worthy to take up space in that arena. So that helped me overcome that one. And then all of the things that you don't know about business. I don't know how to set up an LLC. I don't know how to, I'd worked on other people's websites, but I'd never built my own website. I don't know how to build a website. I'd never purchased a domain before. And so for all the experience that I did have, there was so much that I didn't know. So that knowledge gap was a real deterrent, and it was really scary to just not know and to have to figure it out. So there were, like I said, I could write a novel about all of the reasons that I probably should not have done it and the things that scared me in the beginning.
But you did it.
Yeah, we did it. I think the excitement of it really helped me overcome a lot of my fears, because I really was very excited about barbecue. I was excited about what it had done for my family and the way that we were eating dinner together. I was excited when I saw people cooking my recipes online, even if they didn't know it was me, but they were posting about the recipe that they found on this website. And I was like, oh my gosh, I wrote that. That's so cool. And so having my recipes not just impact my family, but see how they touched other people and how they impacted their family meals. And, knowing how impactful those family dinners were for me growing up, and to have, the family around the table. And so I think I got to the point where I was more excited than I was scared. And that helped smooth some of the fears and just say, you know what, this is something you're really into. You kind of just have to get over it and do it.
And I will say that, and we'll get to the the product side of it, but it's grown into something incredible. In fact, yesterday I was eating chicken that I had cooked, and I was eating it with Hey Grill Hey barbecue sauce, right? And so it's definitely been a success. Awesome. What was some of the pushback? I think you talked about this, and I think it's important, especially being a woman in a male-dominated field. What was some of the pushback that you got, and how did you overcome that?
I think most of the pushback was honestly, I thought there would be more pushback than there was. Like, I had made it into a bigger deal in my mind than it was in real life. I would say 90% of the comments and interactions that I have had were positive and had nothing to do with whether I was a female or a male or whatever. It was just, do the recipes work? So I think I'd worked it into being something bigger. You know, I think we do that with our fears. Sometimes we'll we make them into something more than they are to justify our being scared. And that was definitely the case with me. The reception that I actually received was incredibly positive. There was pushback in certain areas, and in the beginning of my career, I felt like it was really important for me to prove how good of a cook I was and validate my cooking chops if it were, you know. So I went on competition TV shows and I went for a world record in barbecue, and because I didn't have a restaurant, I didn't have, you know, competitive barbecue circuit experience. I didn't have a name in the barbecue space that a lot of people have when they're teaching classes or, you know, they're competing on the KCBS circuit or they're on a TV show. So I set about to really validate my brand early on. And in those scenarios, I think being a woman was beneficial because there just wasn't a lot of representation online. And so when media outlets or TVs found females that were willing to compete and willing to show up, they were like, oh, this is great. So I think it was actually a benefit. It was something I was really afraid of and turned into being something that I think helped my career overall. One of the biggest pieces of like pushback, I didn't find out about it until later, and I'm so glad, was I was on a TV show and it was the first episode and they were picking teams. And it was Bobby Flay and Michael Simon, and they were, you know, deciding who was going to be on their team. And I got picked very last. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the worst. Anyway, I ended up making it to the finale of the show. It was kind of a very cool, like, come from behind, comeback kid story. I found out, I was talking to Mike Simon later, and he's like, oh, yeah, Bobby and I were arguing about who was going to get stuck with the blogger. So it wasn't even a gender thing, but there really is a perception in barbecue that if you're not a competition cook, if you're not a restaurant chef, then you're just like an influencer. And I think a lot of like that whole category, but back then I was one of a handful. Now there's thousands of barbecue influencers, which is so cool. But it's kind of become its own category, and it has its own little like credentials now that it didn't before. So, that was a really cool thing to witness and to be a part of. And now there's so many more women in barbecue. There's so much more representation for females in the space. So it was something that I think mentally held me back. But once I overcame that and just decided to go for it, it didn't end up being as big of a negative as I had imagined that it would be.
So you brought up the TV show, and I'd love to talk about that because I can't remember if I watched the show first and then found your site, or if I found your site and then watched the show. But it was pretty close together. But you talk about the show, Barbecue Showdown, right?
Barbecue Brawl.
Barbecue Brawl, that's right. And I loved it. I thought you did great. But talk about what that did, because I do think there are people, and maybe this is the case, maybe it's not, right? They're like, if I just get that one break, right, like that, then I will have made it, and then people will know. Was the show your big break, or was it just one thing because your traffic on your website is like insane. I got to see behind the curtain a little bit just when we were working together, like insane traffic in a great way. And so was the show so important to your success, or was it just part of it?
In my mind, it was the key to everything. Like being on national TV or cable television, that was going to unlock the gates to the business. You know, everything was going to fall into place after that in my mind.
Yeah.
The reality of it was less impactful than I think I had hoped it would be. People watch, when they're watching TV, they just want to be entertained on TV. Like it's less common for people to watch a show and then pick up their phone, go to social media, search out the person, click the follow button. Like it happens. But like Instagram growth happens on Instagram. It doesn't happen on TV. My website growth happens because of the recipes that I write and the people that cook the recipes. I would say 80% of the people that are cooking recipes on my website have no idea that I was ever on Food Network and don't care. You know, they just want a really good recipe that's going to work. And my brand has become synonymous with that type of recipe. So they keep going back to Hey Girl Hey because they know they'll find something and it's going to turn out great. But I think it was an important piece in the puzzle at that phase in my career. Not only was it a good confidence builder for me and a good brand builder, but like I said, it did give me a certain sense of like credentials in the space that I think opened up additional opportunities after the fact. So I didn't get like 1 million people on my website or 100,000 followers on Instagram because I was on the Food Network. But it was definitely I think a key piece in me saying, okay, this is a real business. I can actually cook really great barbecue. I cooked really great barbecue against some of the best people in the world and made it to the finale of the show. So it was a very validating experience for me. And I talked to a couple people on the show that had been in the business a lot longer than I had. And I was like, you know, is it worth it? And they were like, every single thing you do like this is worth it because it builds your brand. And really thinking at that point about, you know, what Hey Girl Hey was and how it was going to be represented in the public eye and to my audience and what I wanted people to know, that was a really beneficial opportunity for me to reflect on that and decide who I was going to be and who I'm talking to and why it matters. So it wasn't an overnight success switch by any means. Right. But it was a really great step on the path for me as I built my business.
Would you do it again?
Yeah, I'd do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there, I mean, what is it like filming a show with Bobby Flay and Michael Simon?
Terrifying. Like I said, I was a Food Network junkie. I mean, I was 17 when I started watching the Food Network. I never had cable growing up. I had cable in college. That was when my first exposure, really. Before that, it was like Julia Child. But I was dying. Like the idea that I was even on a Food Network show with Iron Chefs that I had watched. I texted Todd, my husband, the first night I got there, and they took us out into the lobby of the hotel and we met all of the other competitors and everything. And I was like, well, it's been fun. I'll see you tomorrow. Like there's no way I'm even making it through the first day of this competition. I'm getting cut first. Like this is such an intimidating, overwhelming, I'm underqualified, I'm underprepared, I shouldn't even be here. Like that was the feeling after I'd met everybody. So it was terrifying and it was very overwhelming, but they were incredibly kind, aside from not wanting to cook with me because I was a stupid vlogger. But once we actually started cooking and, you know, the proof is in the pudding and the food was turning out and I was making it through. And so it was very intimidating, but it was a very kind of validating experience. And it was just an incredibly unique opportunity that I think back on all the time. And I still keep in touch with a couple of people. I mean, everybody that I was competing with on the show, but Mike Simon and I filmed together last year at Memphis in May. And, you know, we've kept in touch. And so it's been lots of awesome things have come from it. But it was so scary.
Here's a nuts and bolts question, because as I watched the show, because I can't remember how many episodes it is, but how many days did it take? Did you film?
Our season was short. It was the pilot season, so there were only 4 episodes. So we filmed 2 episodes back to back, and then we took a break day where we did interviews, like seated interviews where they ask questions about the show, about how did it go, so that they can interject that into the final edit. And then we did 2 more days, and then we did a final set of interviews. So it was, I think, 6 days plus, you know, kind of bookending travel getting there. So it was just over a week.
That's still a lot to pack in, you know?
It was a lot to pack in. The days were incredibly long. I mean, you start at 7 a.m. and we weren't done till 9 or 10 every night. And it was just long days.
Yeah, I remember the finale episode, which is it was just kind of cool. It's like basically sitting down for a dinner at night, and it's like the cool lights, you know.
Yeah.
So it was a cool setting, but I'm like, man, it's late. It's late.
It was like 10 o'clock at night. It was so late.
So you get on Food Network. the everything's taking off. Talk us through what happened during COVID, because actually I think that became a really interesting time for you guys and I didn't think about this until we started working together, but COVID was actually a boon for you guys.
Dude, the barbecue boom during COVID, like if you didn't buy a smoker in 2020, it's because you already had one. Like everybody decided that they were going to learn how to cook barbecue. And I think a big part of it was like, it does take 10 to 12 hours to smoke a pork butt or a brisket, or 6 hours for a rack of ribs. And maybe that's something that you had to save for Saturday or Sunday if you were working 9 to 5. But now if you're working 9 to 5 from home, you can smoke a brisket anytime you want.
Right.
And turns out people wanted to do that a lot, and they did.
Yes.
So we saw a lot of traffic happening during COVID. We saw a huge increase in, people visiting the website for recipes. A bunch of our brand partners that we worked with were selling out of grills all over the place. So it was a really interesting time in the market, and we're still seeing the after effects of COVID, of people, they bought grills in 2020 and 2021. And then 2023 and 2024, we're seeing a lot of these grill companies that grew and expanded. They're laying people off. They're shrinking their teams because people aren't buying grills because they just bought them 2 years ago.
Right.
So it's been a really interesting time in the industry. 2020 was really unique for me too, because after we had filmed the initial Food Network show, I had actually done a couple of other things for Food Network, kind of back to back. And I ended up working with Bobby Flay's production company to produce my own show. So we filmed a really beautiful pilot episode of the show. It aired in June of 2020, which was like mid-COVID. They decided to air the show. It ranked really well. Like our ratings were phenomenal. We had a great showing, a ton of views, and they ended up calling us after it aired and telling us that they weren't going to continue with the show. And it aired at a time when Discovery had lost, I think they said almost $1 billion because advertisers in 2020 had pulled money.
Right.
When the economy is up in the air and in flux, advertising dollars is kind of the first disposable income piece to go. And so many advertisers dropped cash. We saw this because even my website we run ads on our website, and that's how we generate a lot of our revenue. So we saw the same thing. Advertisers were pulling, and they just weren't dropping cash on ads like they previously had been because it's scary and you don't know what's happening. Discovery had just reported $1 billion loss, and they had frozen all new daytime shows. So we kind of got this dream that I had of having my own Food Network show kind of just got caught up in that whole mess. So we were in this balance of, on one hand, our website is the traffic is insane. It's the highest it's ever been. On the other hand, we had this one dream that we would just never see happen. So it was a lot. I know everybody was experiencing ups and downs in 2020, but that was kind of a little snippet of ours. But we also, and a project you helped us on was our Grill Squad, which is our online barbecue course, and kind of online barbecue school. And so we rebuilt that in 2020 and, brought people into, maybe you're taking classes online. Here's a barbecue one, and it's really fun. So that saw good growth in 2020. So it was, some things did really great. Some things were more of a struggle, but it was a very fascinating time to be in barbecue. That's for sure.
And by the way, if you go and you take that that barbecue course, you will see. I think there might be a picture of me and my wife.
Yeah,
but then it's
there.
my neighbors. So like we did a film shoot, and like my neighbors. I have like one that's really into barbecue, one that's not, but like we needed them, and so I always chuckle when I go back to the course. I'm like, hey, there's there's Terry, and
that's
there's
awesome.
Bob.
Yeah, it's that's the cover page for our Facebook group. It's awesome.
Yeah. So please, and it's a really great. And you've been adding stuff to it even since we revamped it. It's incredible. Talk about the like when you and Todd kind of decided, okay, this is not just Susie's thing now. It's in a sense a family business. Like, so Todd comes on board. What was that like, and what went into that decision to work together, and what's that been like?
It was kind of my dream from the beginning, was that we kind of had a family business and that this was something that we ran together. He was working as a CPA, but it was pretty quickly into his accounting career that we both realized, and that he especially realized, I don't love this. Like, I don't love accounting. And if you meet Todd, you would, I mean, he's not a cubicle guy, it just is not his nature. But he was told that accounting would be a really great, reliable route when he was in college by a couple of professors and counselors. And so he ended up following that career path and saying, well, maybe it'll work out. Maybe it'll work out. Getting into the career, doing it for a couple of years and being like, oh, I don't like this. Shoot, what do we do? And after you put all of your time and energy and money into a degree and into the licensing and into a career, like, it's so hard to even think about making that kind of a career switch. And like I said, when I was in a position that I didn't have any side hustles left and he was providing our sole income, it was a really, really impactful thing for him to say, I'm good. What do you want to do? Mm-hmm. And so he gave me a really stable foundation to build this business on. And it was very cool a few years later when I was able to give him that same opportunity to answer that same question, like, okay, I'm good. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
And so we sat down and had the conversation. Hey Grill Hey had been growing. I was really, and he was continually not thrilled with his job. And it hit a point for his mental health where we knew that something had to change. We didn't know what that was going to look like, but we knew that he couldn't keep on the path that he was on forever. He was unhappy. He was unfulfilled. He was drained. It was just all of the hallmarks of a worst case scenario professionally. And that bleeds into your life personally when your work is 40 plus hours of your week,
Right.
So,
right.
We knew we had to make a change. Hey Grill Hey at that point where he was like, I'm exhausted. I don't want to do this anymore. It was not at a point where I could retire him, but I believed that I could get it there. I really did. I was like, I think there's an opportunity here for us to turn this into something more. So I told him, I said, okay, by the end of this year, I'm going to retire you. And he laughed. He's like, that's very cute. You're making like $700 a month. Like, you're not, that's not real. And I was like, but I can figure it out. Like, I really believe I can figure it out. I think I'm on to something. And Hey Grill Hey, I'd been kind of running it part-time, doing it during my fringe hours, babies' naps, and in between play dates and all of that stuff. But I really believe that it could become something. So I gave myself a timeline. I said, by the end of this year, I'll retire you. And I gave myself that challenge and that window and started pushing towards expanding our revenue and things that I could do to really help solidify the business to the point where it would make sense for him to leave. And in June of that year, we'd had a really good couple of months. We had a couple of videos go viral. Our traffic started to stabilize and it kept growing. And our income was growing. And so we sat down in June that year and he's like, okay, let's sketch this out through the end of the year. What does this actually look like? So we put some numbers down. It was like on a paper towel or something after dinner one night, or a napkin. And we kind of sketched out like, okay, if it holds in this pattern over the next 6 months, could we make this happen? And we kind of both concluded that, yeah, this could make sense. And he said, okay, well, I can't quit until we have like 6 months in the bank. Like, I want to know that we're able to sustain this income for a good 6 months before I leave my job. I need a buffer so that if I have to find a new job, we have a window of time where that's something that I can do. So we did all the numbers, we did all the things, and we were like, okay, by December, we should know. We should be able to really make that decision by the end of the year. I think we can pull it off. And he called me the next day and said, hey, I just quit my job. So he ripped off the Band-Aid. He was talking to the CEO of his company and he was asking him, how's your wife's business going? his CEO was very much an entrepreneur as well and was like, this is so exciting. I love what you guys are doing. Tell me all about it. So Todd, of course, tells him all about it and is like, I think I'm going to have to quit if I want to help her run this. Cause it was at the point where like, okay, either you need to quit, we have to hire help with childcare so that I can do this full time, or I have to hire an employee. Like I had maxed out what I could do alone and I really needed the help. So it was coming from him or somewhere else, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so he decided that it was going to be him and that he wanted to quit and that he wanted to not just quit his job and find something else, but quit his job and join me in the business and make this something that we did together. And so when he called me the next day, my jaw, I think it fell through the floor. I was like, pardon me? Like, this was not the plan, you know? And he's like, well, I have great news. My boss is going to give us the 6 months. So my last day will be in December and I have a solid job until then. So it was all both feet on the gas at that point. And we were up till 2 a.m. editing videos. Like we were both so bought into this vision that we had decided together was going to be our future and going to be our reality. And I don't think anything could have held us back at that point. It was really like we'd lit a fire and we were raring to go. It was a really exciting time to have him jump on board and help me during his off hours and, you know, make this final push for us to take the leap. And he did. He quit in December, 2 weeks before Christmas, and we launched into the next year doing this side by side. And it was a really, really cool time for the business.
What year was that then that you launched together?
He quit in December of 2017.
Okay. Wow. That's so encouraging. I mean, and by the way, I think all good ideas are sketched on like napkins or paper towel, like just some scrap piece of paper, if it's an actual proposal, no, not going to be good. It's got to be on a napkin. So then take us to kind of the final, like where you guys are now. You launched, you revamped your product line, and you told me that you actually have a really cool and exciting project that you're launching on Kickstarter. So talk about then the evolution into launching products and what you're doing now.
Yeah. I mean, it's so crazy to even think about, like, the idea of having my own food blog was enough of a dream for that to just be like, holy cow, I get to write about food and I get to have a career in food and it's barbecue and that is so cool. And this is how we make a living. Like, I couldn't even have fathomed that just HeyGrillHey.com with my recipes was enough of a business to support my family. But once you kind of catch the entrepreneurial bug, I feel like it invades your whole soul. So of course, once we're in it, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, okay, we need to start this barbecue school. And so we have the grillsquad.com, which is our online, barbecue community and educational platform. And then people started saying, man, I really love your sweet rub recipe. It'd be so cool if you could bottle it. After enough of those comments,
and it is
Todd
really good.
Thank you. But Todd was like, no, I have audited companies with inventory. We do not want a physical product. But after enough messages and kind of pressing from the audience, he was like, okay, maybe I guess we need a physical product. So that launched us into the line of barbecue seasonings and sauces. We are working right now. This is our kind of next project, is an actual like grilling tool to make barbecue and grilling easier. We have some like cotton lined gloves that are food safe. They're heat safe. They're really dexterous. They're really grippy. But they offer that heat protection that you need. And I am obsessed with them. We've been working on them and finding the right manufacturing partner and getting all of the certifications for the past, it's been over a year. Wow. Product development is really slow. Sometimes that's something that I've learned. So that's a fun iteration that we have up and coming. And I'm also working on a cookbook right now. So that should hopefully be coming out in the next year. But it's just, I kind of always tend to find the next thing, the next project, the next, little something to work on. And it's just, it's amazing to me that there are so many opportunities to build and expand off of this fun little food blog that I started to share my barbecue and grilling recipes with people.
Well, and that's what's awesome, right? Like, you talk about that was stupid. Like, okay, you're gonna go all in on this. Todd's going to quit his job, and it ends up being something just so incredible. And I can really say, like, I'm not just blowing smoke. Like, my pantry is filled with Hey Grill Hey seasonings. There's the fish one and the fish and veggie one. There's the sweet rub. There's the brisket one that I use. It's all so good. And then the sauces. Like I said, I literally did have the peach. It was the whiskey peach barbecue sauce that I had with my chicken for lunch yesterday. So what do you feel like, Susie? This is the question I kind of ask everyone at the end. What do you feel like is the lesson of your That Was Stupid story?
Oh, I think doing the stupid thing has been the biggest takeaway, because it doesn't always turn out. We've started a lot of projects that didn't live up to the hopes and dreams that we'd had for them. And Hey Grill Hey now is not what Hey Grill Hey was when we first started it. The Grill Squad now is not what the Grill Squad was. Our products have been through rebrands now that they weren't in the beginning. Especially with products, we made so many mistakes, and there's so many things that we didn't know because it's a really complicated space. But we've never been afraid to just take the leap, even though it was scary, even though, like I was saying earlier, sometimes we work our fears up to be bigger than they are in reality. I think that can be the biggest hindrance, is not what's actually holding you back, but what's mentally holding you back. And so our ability to just do the thing anyway, even though it was kind of scary and we didn't know the outcome, I think that's really been something that I'm most proud of, is that we do the thing scared and we figure it out as we go. And it's okay that it's not perfect. But we know that we're doing our very best, and we continue to try and provide the best that we can. And, we can always update, we can always change, and we can always improve. So I don't know, just starting, I think, has always been the biggest takeaway for me.
Well, it's encouraging to me, especially as my wife and I both have businesses, right? And we're making decisions on, hey, what do we do? Where do we go? And so it's encouraging even just to be reminded about, your story. And Todd's awesome. He was, before we got on, he was like, I'm not good at this. So he bowed out, but Todd is really funny. Like, you'll watch him on some of your videos, and there was one a couple of weeks ago where he was, I don't know, I was just like laughing. I almost texted, but he's great. So go ahead and go to heygrillhey.com and thegrillsquad.com, and you will not be disappointed. And from products to the courses, Susie, you have been so awesome. I mean, it was so funny. Like, when we started working together, I think I saw you on the show, and then I reached out. I saw the Grill Squad, and I was like, "Hey, my background is in courses. I think you guys had posted, like, there was like a meltdown with the course provider."
It was actually a meltdown during COVID.
Yeah. And so I reached out and I said, hey, I've been following you, and I'm a member of this. Like, I love this. Like, this is kind of what I do. Can I help you guys? And like, I'm like, they're not going to respond. And I think Todd responded like right away. He's like, yes, please. Can we have a call? So you guys are such down to earth people. I love you guys. And I just want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It was so fun to catch up.
Did you like her as much as I did, right? Like, can you see she is just great to work with. And if you watched Barbecue Brawl and liked her, I think, she was the most down-to-earth person on that season of the show, which was the first, the inaugural season. And what you see is what you get. And she is so great. I really cannot recommend enough her course. I cannot recommend enough her seasonings and her sauces. And I can't wait for the glove. I'm definitely going to get the glove when it comes out. So make sure to go to heygrillhey.com and thegrillsquad.com and check her out. And also, if you like this episode, please rate, like, subscribe, share. It really does do a lot to spread the message that we're talking about here on the That Was Stupid podcast. So until next time, we'll talk to you soon.